Whether it's a youth, amateur, or professional sporting event, moms are the biggest fans in attendance. From orange peels at halftime to batter's box cheers, a mom's dedication is unmatched. This Mother's Day, show her how much you've appreciated all the support she's given you with 1-800-Flowers.com. Right now, when you get ahead of the Mother's Day rush, 1-800-Flowers will give you an exclusive 30 for 30 offer. 30 assorted tulips for just $30. With a bright and beautiful mix of orange, yellow, and pink blooms, these assorted tulips are guaranteed to make her smile. Assorted tulips are the perfect way to surprise all of the moms in your life. Wife, aunt, sister, grandma. Tulips from 1-800-Flowers are picked at their peak from premier farms and shipped overnight to ensure freshness. 30 assorted tulips for only $30. It's an amazing offer, but you have to hurry because it expires Tuesday. Just pick your delivery date and 1-800-Flowers will handle the rest. Don't put this off, guys. Order today from 1-800-Flowers.com. It's what Mom would want you to do. To order 30 stunning assorted tulips for only $30, go to 1-800-Flowers.com/Wingo. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/Wingo. Order today and save at 1-800-Flowers.com/Wingo. Offer expires Tuesday.
Squirrels are known for saving, but with the help of AARP, they won't be the only ones. From planning to budgeting, AARP is here to help you stretch your dollar further. So take on today and every day with AARP. Learn how at takeontoday.aarp.
This is the best of Golic and Wingo podcast.
Golic and Wingo, ESPN Radio and ESPN News. Presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Mike Golic Jr. Trey Wingo here. How are we, boys?
Doing well. Made it through the weekend, right?
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Well, let me put it this way. Saturday at about 5:30, to quote LeBron, I'm burnt, man.
You're burnt?
Burnt.
Didn't see you Friday.
The voice was not a willing participant after Thursday night.
Yeah.
You had a LeBron James cramp-filled third quarter?
I had a cramp-filled, kind of, exactly. All in the general throat region.
Steve Keim, the GM of the Cardinals. He got on you pretty hard.
He already
red flagged you?
He already texted me.
Yeah.
And his quote back was, "Thank God social media wasn't around in our day. We both would have been
Boy,
red
isn't that the truth. But hey, another draft in the books, some more playoffs going on in NBA and hockey. So, let the games, let the next part of the NFL season begin. Now we have rookie mini camps, regular mini camps, and then we move on. We're going to have that black hole period. What about the third week of June till the third week of July, where there's absolutely nothing, when players love it because they get some time off.
Well, and when players also have the best chance of getting fired on their day off. That's that period where you get sent home after off-season program, and that's the first thing everyone says. All the veterans remind you, don't do anything dumb like get fired on your day off.
And yet it happens every year.
Yes,
every single time.
It manages to happen and raise its ugly head every year.
And no worries about what LeBron will do on his day off. He may not get out of bed today.
I believe he's in full comatose mode, IV drip, all that kind of stuff. But it was a great weekend in Arlington. Draft was a lot of fun. By the way, kudos to everybody that put the show together, Golic and Wingo. The taco truck and the donut truck.
It was fantastic,
wasn't
it? Yeah, that was it was the first time our the Golic Wingo bus was on the road. We do the show right by it. It's a backdrop behind our set, and we get these food trucks. And as Trey mentioned, there's nothing like a breakfast burrito, breakfast tacos, and then of course donuts in the morning. So our thanks to those two for coming by, and everybody that came out for it. A little chilly the first morning there. A little better. It was
a little brisk. It was a little brisk,
but it was enjoyable. It was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. Love traveling around on that bus.
And that La Quinta, by the way.
Yeah,
that was a really nice hotel.
You were in the workout room, weren't you?
I was. I'm ripped.
You're ripped.
I was telling one of our friends, Jason Fitz, who famously toured with the band Perry for a long time. I told him we stayed at La Quinta in Arlington. And he said, you know what the running joke was with us on the road was that La Quinta was Spanish for near a Denny's.
Yes.
What did we eat at multiple times? It was a stone's throw away.
You ate there twice. I ate there 3 times.
Look,
I went and worked out at Orange Theory after the show and then went right to Denny's, the protein load. It was fantastic.
I'm telling you right now, if you want just a good breakfast, like what we all agree growing up, what was like the most awesome breakfast of all time, it's hard to top it down.
Yeah, it
Grand
is.
Slam, baby.
And there's so many different slams. That's the beauty.
So here's the thing. We're real quick on that. And what the fans of the teams that were there that were also staying at La Quinta with us, who would go, different fans from different teams. I went and worked out at Orange Theory, had the Uber guy drop me off at Denny's, loaded up on Denny's, and I was walking back to La Quinta, and right outside, couple of guys had a cooler, a couple of beers. 4 guys were playing cornhole. They're like, "Hey, Golic, want to play?" I'm like, yeah, not right now. I'm a little tired, but you guys keep going after it. I almost went back out, but then I fell asleep.
Yeah, well, that was probably the better thing.
Yeah, probably.
By the way, I ran into 2 guys from Scotland at the La Quinta.
Scotland?
They came in from Scotland to watch the draft. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I told that to Roger when we did the interview. Hey, you're big in Glasgow.
There you go.
He was
trying
happy
to
about
world
that.
domination.
World domination is a very big thing. All right, let's get going.
It's time for
Off the Top
Whether you like it or not,
It's just beginning.
with Golic and Wingo.
and here is why LeBron James may never leave his bedroom today with the curtains closed and just got an IV drip and just sleeping the day away. LeBron scored 45 points to lead the Cavs to that Game 7 win over the Pacers. Second time James has scored 45 points in a Game 7, making him the only player in NBA history to have done it twice.
I mean, the numbers are ridiculous. Leading the team in points, rebounds, and assists 20th time in his career. He's done that outright. No other player has done it more than 6 times. That would be Tim Duncan. Jordan did it once. I mean, there are a ton of numbers you can go through on this, but I will spin it ahead, I guess, to the next series right away, Mike, we'll get into against Toronto, or Cleveland's actually the underdog in this series. I don't know how much longer, LeBron can keep going with this. I mean, the 1 year he decides to play all 82 games.
Yeah.
And now, is he going to go less than 7 games in a series that he's going to win and keep moving on, where he's doing everything under the sun? Got some good help from Tristan Thompson. Got his first start. 15 points, 10
Didn't think
rebounds.
we'd get to say that.
That's exactly right. Works well in that high pick and roll. They work well together on that. He did a nice job, but nobody else is scoring over 20 points. The work he is putting in is getting ridiculous, and I don't know how long it will last. I heard you talking about it tomorrow. What a chance for Toronto to jump on it. We'll have time to talk about that, but going forward, I don't know where this team's going to go.
Everything points in favor of Toronto in Game 1, which is what gives me pause, but the number that should make the Raptors fans happiest, -40, the worst point differential for a team winning a series that went 7 games in playoff history. -40. That was how much the Cavs were outscored by the Pacers in this series. So it was never really close. They find a way to eke it out, and now they've got to find a way to just milk every last bit out of LeBron James that they can.
We'll get into this a little bit later, but there are some things that he's done in this series.
Crazy.
Look, at the end of the day, at some way, if you're trying to criticize LeBron right now, you need a hug and group therapy because it's on you, because he has been in the zone. Brought to you by AutoZone. Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Off the Top.
Well, the Rockets picked up right where they left off. I think that rhythm that they were looking for, got it. They won Game 1 by 14 points after sweeping the regular season series against Utah. James Harden, 41 points, his 6th career 40-point game in the postseason.
They were actually about 10 3-point attempts under their average,
and still won by 14.
They shot 32. They averaged like 42, and they made 53% of them. They made 17 of them. It's ridiculous. James Harden made 7 of 12 from 3-point land, and so help me God, Mike, if you read that ridiculous stat.
What are you talking about?
That you read this morning.
The stat?
Oh no.
What are you talking about? The quantified shot quality metric from our friends over at Second Spectrum? You didn't like this one?
No.
Come on. This didn't get you going in the morning?
No.
Do you know what happened?
No.
How difficult what James Harden did this weekend was? He's shooting 42% on threes that the average shooter would make only 32% of the time.
How do you know that?
Because, our friends at Second Spectrum.
How do they know that?
Well, it's their quantified shot quality metric. The difference between what he's making and what he should be making ranks 7th best among 52 players with 23-point field goal attempts this weekend. Last postseason, underachieving 28% of his threes when he should have been making 31.
I'd like to apologize for all the people listening in their cars.
Second
that just
Spectrum,
drove
man, they
into
get
a
it.
bridge abutment.
I want you to leave.
Brett, can you, researcher?
This
Brett,
is war, right? Yeah. This is war.
This is war.
I would say this is even a step further than war.
Yeah, it's bore.
It's
bore.
So what? Second Spectrum has all these cameras in all the arenas, and basically the quantified shot quality thing is they say, okay, based on where he's shooting it from and where the defender is, we're going to create a number to say that this is how often it should be made.
I think what he just said, we're going to create a number. We're just going to pick a number. We're just going to mythically apply some sort of Can I just say one thing?
It was my understanding that there would be no math.
This is war, right?
I mean, is this war or is this an infinity war?
Oh, we're going to
go see the movie this weekend.
Go see the movie this week. Check it out. do that. We're going to break that one down.
Big up, didn't he?
Can I throw one more in there?
We're making
Please
money.
do.
James Harden lulling them to sleep. You'll like this, Trey.
Yeah.
He averages 8.2
Stop
dribbles
it.
on the three-pointer.
Stop it. You are not going down the dribble road.
Make it nasty.
We are not doing the dribble thing.
And this, I almost feel like this just started last week. I started reading things about a dribble. This clock couldn't come fast enough. You should have quickened this thing.
Yes.
Thank God, move on.
50% of his threes were on step backs.
Second spectrum quantitative dribble analysis.
It's so good.
Off the top.
I think we all need therapy.
Oh, my God.
Meanwhile, the Yankees, wow, warm, hot, good stuff. Beat the Angels on Sunday Night Baseball to extend their winning streak to 9 games. Here was the call on ESPN Radio by Book Shambi at the final out.
Here comes. Swing and a miss. Struck him out. The Yankees win it, and they complete the sweep. 2-1 the final, and New York has now won 9 in a row.
Again, ESPN Radio, Boog Shambi with the call. That's their longest winning streak since 2012.
Yeah, it is, where they won 10 straight there. Gary Sanchez led the way, hit his 60th home run in his 201st game. The only player in baseball history to reach that mark faster was his teammate Aaron Judge, who did it 197 games. In this 9-game winning streak, plus 46 run differential, 40 extra base hits, the ERA of 176. So, listen, they got it going on right now. They got different guys doing it, except for Stanton, who still struggles a bit at times. But, I mean...
At times.
Yeah. At times.
Nice that he can get covered up by this, though. And this is the danger, and Trey, you pointed this out way back when we were all lamenting the Yankees' rough stretch. But this is the difficulty in trying to evaluate baseball on a game-by-game basis. The season is just too long to not give trends time to build up. And it's difficult, and I guess I understand sort of the plight of this because we love to embrace stars in every league, and you want to monitor what these stars are doing night in and night out. But in most cases, it's a fool's errand, and in baseball, it's heightened more than anything else with the longest regular season in sports.
Well, look, the Red Sox got off to that ridiculously hot start, right? And they just were never going to lose. They're now 5-5 in their last 10. The Yankees are 9-1, and that unbelievable lead is down to just 2 games, and we haven't even hit May 1st yet. So, I mean, it's not a war. It's not an infinity war. It's a war of attrition.
It feels like an infinity war. 162 games might as well be an infinity. Go see the movie this week.
Infinity war of attrition. We're going to have to talk about that. You're going to have to tell me about that movie without giving it away.
Oh, I have a great non-spoiler review of this movie. It was great. Everyone needs to go see it.
There was as many superheroes as there are games in a baseball season.
Or we could just talk about that later, as researcher Brett might say. Are we doing etymology this week? We doing that later?
Yeah.
All right, good. Want to make sure.
Etymology, please give him the credit he deserves.
Oh, yes, because you know what Brett's lacking for on this show?
Yeah.
Credit. Here we go. All right, we're done.
Off the top.
Kill the buzzer. And let's do what we always do.
As they say in hockey, let's do that hockey.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chance. Caps and Predators even up their series at 1 apiece. Nashville picked up the double overtime win over the Jets on a goal by Kevin Fiala, while Alex Ovechkin scored to help the Caps beat the Pens 4-1.
Again, what is more exciting than playoff hockey, but overtime playoff hockey? And in this one, 2 overtimes. The Jets scored with about a minute to go in regulation to take this one into overtime. They go 2 overtimes. You mentioned Fiala gets the goal, tie that series 1 apiece. Caps beat the Penguins 4-1 to tie that one. Penguins 0-for-3 on their power plays this time around. The Washington has scored first 7 of their 8 postseasons. 6th time in the postseason, they held a 2-goal lead. We know they've blown a few of those as well. This time they hold on, and they really come out strong. 20 of their 32 shots came in the first period, and they led 2-0 after the first.
Jeez, and I'm the nerd throwing out stats.
Yeah.
Good Lord. There was some controversy that Pens-Caps game. There was a goal that was waved off that a lot of people are disputing. There was a hit in that game that a lot of people were calling dirty that to me just looked like a bang-bang play. It's unfortunate the way it ended up, but getting sandwiched between Ovechkin and another one of the Caps players. Just one of those that happened too quickly. No controversy in Nashville. Drinking beers off Catfish is back. I am going to, one way or another, find a way to work that into a bet with you guys. We've got to figure out a way to do it because I need to watch.
Drinking beer, losing it off a Catfish, right? I'll do that.
What's the issue?
Was I not here the other show when both of them balked at the idea of drinking beer out of a Catfish?
You said drinking it out of the Catfish.
Is there a difference?
Yeah, I'll lose it off a Catfish.
Absolutely.
I have no problem with that.
All right, well, I want it out of the Catfish now.
All right, fine.
All right,
I'm all in.
whatever you want.
When did this change all of a sudden? When did you guys
we have
grow
no idea what
spines?
you're talking
we have
about.
no idea what you're
no
talking
clue
about.
what you're talking about.
Literally,
No
I
clue.
think that you're
making
conflated
things
one
up.
show with another show.
Hit the button again or something. Off the top.
Oh, really?
Off the top.
Just for you.
As they say in hockey, let's do that hockey.
Or I'm in everything but that now.
The 76ers and the Celtics began their 20th postseason series tonight.
Off the top.
Do that hockey.
The 76ers and Celtics began their 20th postseason series tonight. The most series meetings between two teams in NBA history.
Yeah, the second is Celtics and Knicks 14 times. Third is Celtics and Lakers 12 times. And tied for third is Celtics and Hawks 12 times. Yeah. Celtics are in there an awful lot.
Well, that's just it. The Boston Celtics play a lot of postseason games.
In the, let's see, in the 50s it was 6 times. In the 60s it was 4 times. However, since they met in 85, they've only played 2 times. The last time being in 2000. And I am so looking forward to this series. And kudos to Boston. Again, we know that Gordon Hayward's been out all year, but without Kyrie, you know, what they've been able to do. Now, the Celtics won 3 of the 4 meetings against 76ers. Kyrie was around for all of them, though. And when Joel Embiid is playing, they're going on, 11 straight wins when he's on the court. I just think the 76ers are going to be too good in this one.
76ers are the much more talented team, but Brad Stevens has proved himself the NBA MacGyver at this point. It doesn't really matter what's on the court. He's going to find a way to make it win
MacGyver
games.
And you didn't go MacGruber?
Well, I wanted to use. I'm slowly learning that I've got to feed you guys things that you'll understand.
Yeah. Well,
so I know you guys speak MacGyver. You don't necessarily speak MacGruber.
Well, you were just so passionate in your defense of MacGruber the other day. I'm shocked that you didn't go there.
I mean, listen, it seems counterintuitive, much like using the smaller end of the celery stick, but
you get.
What? That's a deep cut MacGruber reference for my real diehards out there.
That's
you
know
right.
What? The 4 people that love that movie probably got that reference.
I'm actually one of them.
By the way, Jaylen Brown doubtful for game 1.
Got that
That's going to be a problem.
Heard you got that hammy. They said he could have come back in the game if they needed him. I'm like, when I saw that, I'm like, no, he's not coming back in the game if they need him. He is not.
So that's what happens tonight, and we'll see what happens there. That is Off the Top. Golic and Wingo, presented by Progressive Insurance, protecting your small business. It's a big deal. Cover what you've worked so hard for. Visit ProgressiveCommercial.com. And speaking of covering what you've worked so hard for, clearly that was the case with LeBron James. As we said, second time in a Game 7 he scored 45 points. That has never happened before in NBA history in a playoff game. And Ty Lue knows this was basically LeBron carrying us into the second round.
It's hard to put into words, but, that's why he's the best player on the planet. He put us on his back and just scoring the basketball, facilitating, just being aggressive. I think getting their bigs in foul trouble a lot throughout the course of this series by attacking the basket and just getting to the free throw line, putting a lot of pressure on their defense. So he did it all for us this series.
When he says he did it all, let's be 100% clear of what he's talking about. This was the 20th time in which LeBron James has led his team over an entire playoff series in points, assists, and rebounds. 20 times he's done that. Next highest on that list, Tim Duncan with 6 times. Larry Bird next with 5. That's ridiculous. Yeah. So he's done it basically 3 times as often as Tim Duncan and 4 times as often as Larry Bird.
I don't want to go back and say the rest of this team is as bad as the Cavalier team that he took to the finals against San Antonio when San Antonio swept him out. I don't think that the rest of his team is that bad, but as far as the help he's getting, I mean, I'd have to go back and look at that series, and what they were doing and how much help he got from those guys because he's just not getting it. Nobody else scoring 20 points. I mean, it's getting ridiculous.
Well, and I think defensively, too, I forget if it was Dave McMenamin or Brian Windhorst, one of the guys who's usually always closest to this situation, pointed out, those teams were at least good defensively. Like, those guys made up for not scoring on offense by at least playing defense.
Right.
What does this Cavs team have? Neither. I mean, it's got to be the worst statistically defensive team left in the playoffs. One of the historically the worst out there. I saw points per 100 possessions. They're up around 111. They've been god awful all year, and this has been the last 2 years now for this Cavs team.
So the one change they made, Tristan Thompson made his first start this playoffs. He hit 5 of his 6 shots. He did have 10 rebounds. We talked about earlier the high pick and roll. He runs well with LeBron. He certainly provided them with a little bit of a spark, on both sides, really.
Right.
Him scoring 15 points and pulling down then the 10 boards. But, Man, I mean, as I said, LeBron playing 82 games and then doing all he has to do in this one. You heard him mouthing to I don't know who it was to, and this said that he's playing the whole game. He's playing the whole game.
All game.
But he didn't, obviously, when it cramped up a little bit and couldn't play the whole game. But he still played, over 43 minutes of this game after, as we mentioned, 82 games. He played every game in the regular season. I don't know where the expectation keeps going here.
Well, look here. Adding on to that stat we talked about with leading and points, assists, and rebounds, Michael Jordan did that once, by the way. Now, granted, obviously there were other players on the team. We understand that. But the shoulder, the burden LeBron is shouldering is unreal. And this is the first time that LeBron's team has won a playoff series in which no other player on the team ever scored 20 points one time. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous the amount. And I'm just wondering, whenever it is that LeBron stops, 3, 4, 5 years, if he never wins another championship, I'm not sure he'll ever be really appreciated for how much he had to do to get his teams to where they needed to be.
I mean, should this statistic alone not tell you what he's been working with for that to be the case so often? And I don't know how people are going to try and spin this if LeBron makes it such, because we know he's a guy that would rather defer, and we always have to sort of goad into being a score first, me first kind of player. But the fact that he did this, because we always go back to this spot, and it's deplorable, but it's the place the argument always goes is LeBron and Jordan.
Right.
The fact that Michael Jordan only led his team in points, rebounds, and assists in the playoffs outright one time shows you not that Michael Jordan was a bad player, but that he just had a much better team around him for all those runs. And for some reason, arguing that seems like a slight against him when it just should be a reality the other way. LeBron James has A, been going up against a historically great Golden State team for a while now, and B, has basically nothing around him.
Again, when they did the top 50 players in NBA history, I think it was the 98 All-Star game in New York, Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan were both there.
Yeah.
Okay? They were both on that team. Oh, by the way, then you had, whether it was Ho Grant or Dennis Rodman, unbelievable rebounders on all those Chicago
Bulls. The shooters
teams.
like Paxson and Kerr.
They had all the elements.
Yeah.
I mean, people are talking about these super teams that, with Bosh and Wade. You had two of the top 50 players in the history of the NBA with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. And now, of course, the question is, can they do to Toronto what they always do to Toronto? LeBron was asked about that because that series starts Tuesday night. He was asked about it Sunday, and he was not ready for that question.
I'm burnt right now. I'm not thinking about Toronto right now until tomorrow. I'm ready to go home. I'm tired. I want to go home.
LeBron,
I'm so tired.
I understand your pain.
So tired.
Just so you know.
Golic
and Wingo.
and Wingo.
Mm-hmm. Trey Wingo and Mike Golic Sr.
For the Washington Redskins, Trey Quinn, a wide receiver from SMU. We'll see you in Newport Beach. Congratulations, Mr. Irrelevant.
It was the last pick in the NFL draft, Mr. Irrelevant. We'll get to in a moment. Sports Center brought to you by Goodyear. Baseball season is here. Players are more driven to work hard, prove themselves early, and earn their position. Goodyear knows all about being more driven. They work hard for you every day, earning a position on your vehicle and on the road. Order your Goodyear tires from a local dealer near you.
All right, Golic and Wingo with you this morning, the Monday morning after the NFL draft. We'll get into it a little bit later with Mel Kiper Jr. and Todd McShay. But again, this has been a thing for about 20 years or so now. Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick of the draft. And by the way, there have been some very good Mr. Irrelevant picks over the years. Ryan Suckup, the kicker,
right?
Still kicking all these years later, was a Mr. Irrelevant. The Jerron Christensen, who went, I believe, in the third round, offensive lineman out of Louisville this year. His brother, actually, a few years ago, Gerald Christian, was a Mr. Irrelevant and played last season for the Arizona Cardinals and caught a couple of touchdown passes. Currently a free agent. Mr. Irrelevant gets a whole big thing. They get a parade in their honor in
Disneyland.
California. And then they go to Disneyland.
They get an arrival party, a Rolex watch.
You get a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
But this year's Mr. Irrelevant was a guy named Trey Quinn, who was a wide receiver at SMU. So he was the second SMU wide receiver drafted. Obviously, Cortland Sutton,
right?
The bigger wide receiver, went to Denver in the second round. But Trey Quinn is a very interesting guy, besides having an awesome first name. He started out at LSU, where he didn't really fit in, but then he had one season at SMU. In his one season at SMU,
this worked out. He might as well have had 4 seasons somewhere else.
114 catches for over 1,200 yards and 13 touchdowns. So that right alone makes him not really irrelevant. He was very relevant with the SMU offense, but he did stuff way before that, Mike, that also made him interesting.
Let's go back to 2008. Let's go to the Little League World Series. He threw a no-hitter in the opening round of that Little League World Series in Williamsport in 2008.
So this
How about that?
This guy can do a little bit of everything.
Yeah,
he went to Washington with that final pick. So look, Trey Quinn, I'm going to go on a limb. I'm not going to bet poop on it. Trey Quinn is making that Washington roster.
When the draft when I was playing and the draft was 12 rounds, if you were a lower round pick, the odds were they weren't going to keep you on. I was a 10th rounder, and the odds are against you. There are 7 rounds now, so the odds are better that the drafted players, obviously the early ones, but even the later ones, 5th, 6th, 7th round, still have a pretty good shot to make the team because it's down to 7 rounds, and then we see undrafted free agents make it all the time.
Yep.
So even when you go in that later round, man, you know what? As I said in a tweet, you get issued shoulder pads and a helmet. Learn your playbook, make the most of your opportunities in your situation. And so Trey has a chance, and a lot goes along with this. Again, Mr. Irrelevant, kind of a ha-ha tongue-in-cheek thing. Bottom line is, you get to line up in mini camps coming up and get to show what you can do.
Look, and it's not only that. You also, like you said, the undrafted. Let's just go through the list of things that have happened. Kurt Warner, undrafted, at one point had the top 3 passing games of all time in Super Bowl history until the last 2 years when Tom Brady went nuts. I think he has 3, 4, and 6 now. So he has 3 of the top 6 passing games in NFL history. Jake Delhomme has thrown the longest touchdown pass in Super Bowl history, quarterback for the Carolina Panthers, undrafted. The longest rush from scrimmage in Super Bowl history, Fast Willie Parker from the Pittsburgh Steelers, also undrafted. And the longest touchdown from the scrimmage, James Harrison, that interception as the Steelers linebacker against the Cardinals right before the half in Super Bowl 43, went 102 yards, also undrafted. Tony Romo, undrafted. There's lots of people that'll have an opportunity. You all want to hear your name called. No question about it. Right. Danny Woodhead had an unbelievable career. Undrafted. Sometimes it's actually better to be undrafted than it is to be a seventh rounder because you get to control the situation.
You did. So now you have an opportunity, and the best advice I give you right out of the gate is learn the playbook.
Yes.
Because you have less margin for error. Know where to line up, know where your responsibility, and then 100 miles an hour every single time. Take advantage of each rep because they're far and few between when you're an undrafted free agent.
Golic.
I tell you what, a great sports night last night, no doubt about it.
And Wingo.
What a day, what a show, what a time.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I'm a one-trick pony. Literally. I show up at kids' parties and act cute. That's pretty much it. So excuse me for being bitter. When Geico says not only could we save you money on car insurance, but we do more. Like give you 24/7 access online, over the phone, or even via our award-winning mobile app. Well, ooh la la. Aren't they multi-talented? Hey, I said organic carrots.
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
ESPN NBA reporter Royce Young now joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. What an intro he's getting. Get the feeling of being rewarded with gold status at Shell with the Fuel Rewards program. Download the Fuel Rewards app, join, and start saving 5 cents a gallon today. Royce covered the Jazz Rockets game last night for us. First and foremost, let's deal with the game you were at, Royce. It certainly seemed like the Rockets did whatever they want whenever they wanted in that contest.
Yeah, I think that there was some elements of fatigue maybe for the Utah Jazz. Just 36 hours before that, they were in Salt Lake City trying to finish off Russell Westbrook taking 43 shots, and what Oklahoma City was doing. That was a really physical, difficult series. And for this Jazz team, they lose Ricky Rubio in that game, and they don't have him in Game 1 against Houston. You've got the Rockets, who are the best regular season team in the NBA, 65-win team, just basically sitting there waiting on you. That's a tough spot to be in. And, the Rockets, with what they do offensively, the Jazz had basically the best defense in the NBA this year, but, when you've only got 36 hours to transition from Oklahoma City's offense to trying to figure out how to guard Houston's offense, there's not a lot of time there. And that's something really Quinn Snyder kind of talked about after the game yesterday is that, now they've got 2 days off between 1 and 2. And anytime you go on the road in the NBA, in a playoff series, you're just looking to get one of 2 games, and now they've got these 2 days off, and they've got to really prioritize locking in and figuring out what kind of adjustments they can make because Houston just did whatever they want. The Jazz kind of settled in a little bit after going down 25 in the first half. They settled in, got kind of in the flow of the game in the second half, but it was too little too late.
Well, yeah, I mean, they won that second half 57-46, but they were getting destroyed anyway, so we don't know what the want to was on the Houston part. of the second half of that. And as you mentioned, undermanned. They have a couple of days now to kind of catch their breath. What's the situation with Ricky Rubio?
Yeah, it's this hamstring issue, something that Rubio dealt with towards the end of the season. It's really unknown right now, Mike, if it's a re-aggravation or what it is. But our Adrian Wojnarowski reported that could keep him out up to 10 days. Which, if that's the case, I mean that's potentially all 4 games if it goes that way. If this is a sweep scenario, so the Jazz miss Rubio, and it was evident what he brings to the team. In that first-round series against the Thunder, he was fantastic in that series. Just in terms of the Jazz offense, he really engineers it. And while Donovan Mitchell has been a revelation, the guy is absolutely sensational. I wouldn't even say he's a budding superstar at this point. He just flat-out is a superstar. The guy is fantastic. But it's a lot of responsibility to put on his shoulders to say, hey, here's the ball in your hands for the majority of this game. You got to figure it out. You not only have to score, but you got to set everybody else up. And that's a lot to ask for a rookie.
NBA reporter Royce Young with us. Speaking of shouldering the load, what more can you say about LeBron James? I mean, either if at this point you don't respect what he's been able to do with this Cleveland Cavaliers team, you just simply don't respect him. 45 points for the second time in a Game 7. That's never happened before. He takes them out of this series into the second round with a team that not once, any time in any of these 7 games did any other Cav player score at least 20 points.
Yeah, 13-0 now, Trey, in an opening round series. That's, there's a lot of absurd LeBron James stats that you can go through, and you can just pick them out. I mean, whichever one you want to do, whether it's the consecutive finals appearances, whatever you want to do. But that one right there, to me, is one of the most impressive ones because the mental focus that takes, just not to have one bad year where you just get upset. And this seemed like the one. Right. Like you mentioned, this is a Cavs team that was really kind of outgunned in a lot of different ways. And for LeBron to basically, there was that moment that everybody saw on TV where he looked at his family and said, like, I'm playing the whole game. And he didn't end up going all 48. He played 35 consecutive minutes at one point. But the guy is, I mean, we saw him bleed, so we do know he is at least human. We saw him bleed in Game 6. But, before that happened, I think we were still all having our doubts, even though this is his 15th year. But the guy is just, he's absurd. And here's the credit I think that we give LeBron James. They walk into a series against the Toronto Raptors, the best team in the Eastern Conference, and we're all sitting here. There's plenty of people that are picking the Cavaliers because we're just like, LeBron is LeBron, and you got to give him a chance because the guy's that amazing.
Yeah, I think people will just pick them until Toronto can prove that they can overtake them, and You're right, Cleveland has LeBron. Yeah. We're talking to Royce Young, ESPN NBA reporter, who definitely has a pulse not only on the NBA, but on the Oklahoma City Thunder as well. The news out of there, Carmelo Anthony didn't really like the role playing that he did coming off the bench, can opt in for $28 million, saying it's really not about the money, even though he has kind of been about the money through his career. What do we think his next move will be?
Yeah, things got really interesting for the Thunder one day after their season ended, Mike, at exit interviews. Everybody around the league, basically going back to training camp, believed that Carmelo Anthony was assured to opt into that $28 million final year of his contract. And now there's been some doubt cast on that. And I think Carmelo Anthony basically laid it out there that right now what he's going to weigh as it comes up on this is his basketball happiness versus $28 million. And because, from everything I was told in Oklahoma City, Carmelo bought into his role. He did what he was asked. He never griped once. The chemistry in the locker room was fantastic. But I think that silently Carmelo Anthony was harboring something, and he really wasn't all that happy with what the Thunder were asking him to do because, quite frankly, he wasn't that great at it. And, a lot of people talked about, can he be Olympic Melo? Can we finally see Olympic Melo? And he was Olympic Melo. He just wasn't good at it. He missed open shots. He wasn't comfortable playing power forward on a full-time basis. And now I think Carmelo Anthony's got to sit back. He basically said, I am not coming off the bench. Yeah. At 34 years old, I think everybody saw in the playoff series against the Jazz, it's time for a role adjustment for Carmelo Anthony, but he's not ready to go that direction. So he's got a lot to sort out on his own here.
I think we'd all like to be comfortable enough with our finances to say at 34, I can turn down $28 million. I mean, that's an amazing thing in and of itself. As Royce Young, our NBA reporter, is with us, who covers the Thunder as well as everything else going on in the NBA. So then the question becomes, this move may hamstring a couple of organizations, right? If he does opt in for $28 million, what can the Thunder do to sort of get a better team going? And if he doesn't, is he just waiting to find out what happens with LeBron in Cleveland?
Yeah, look, Trey, that's essentially what this is going to play out as. And I think it was pretty clear. Look, Carmelo Anthony was a pro all season long. There was no complaints about him whatsoever. But I do think if he decides to opt into that $28 million, which again I think that's the most likely scenario, the Thunder could have a little bit of a toxic situation on their hands, and we could kind of see what played out with Dwayne Wade in Chicago, in that Carmelo could say, "I'm opting in for $28 million, but I still don't want to be here," and he still holds his no trade clause, and so he could give the Thunder a list of teams. He could say, "I would want to go here," but who's really trading for Carmelo Anthony on a $28 million deal at this point? So it really could then come down to a buyout negotiation for the Thunder and Carmelo. And, both sides, I'm sure, want to avoid any sort of, back and forth, especially something in the media where things are leaking out. But it could get resolved. I think that maybe, Billy Donovan, one of the things that he is an absolute master at is managing ego and managing relationships with players. You talk to anybody that's ever been coached by Billy Donovan, that's what they say he's absolutely remarkable at. And I think it was evident that he did a pretty great job of it this season because Carmelo Anthony apparently wasn't that happy, and he didn't hear a peep about it. So it's about to get real interesting this summer for OKC.
How interesting will it get with Paul George?
Yeah,
very. And here's the thing about it, Mike. Paul, with what he said at exit interviews, was basically consistent with what he has been saying. Starting with talking with our Rachel Nichols and saying how he liked Oklahoma City. He said, "quote, they checked all his boxes." He was even asked about the Los Angeles element, and he kind of tried to brush it off. And he said, that's not going to be the only deciding factor. The fact that that's his hometown. He's got a lot to think about. He talks as if he's a guy that really is leaning to staying in Oklahoma City, but I think that there's an emotional factor there. I think that he kind of feels a little bit like this season was disappointing. I think he really has a strong relationship with Russell Westbrook. That's something I think that surprised a lot of people is how quick they took to each other, both on and off the floor. But there's a month and a half or so before he's got to sit down and actually make this decision. And, that's a lot of time for things to change, for him to weigh pros and cons. But as it sounds right now, he sounds like a guy that wants to stay in Oklahoma City.
Well, look, the NBA offseason is almost always sometimes more interesting than the regular season. This one could be really choiced if we have Paul George, Melo, and LeBron all there, maybe to collaborate to find some place to go. And it will make things fascinating, as it always is, for the offseason in the NBA. Royce, we appreciate your time. Thanks, man.
You bet, guys.
Thanks, Royce.
Golic and Wingo.
It was all sort of one big, giant Jell-O mold. It's very interesting where that went.
Our next guest, who, despite having the handicap of having to work with me for 7 years covering the NCAA women's basketball tournament, still somehow had a feature article about her in the New York Times over Saturday's weekend edition. Doris Burke Has Game was the name of the article, and Doris Burke, our outstanding NBA analyst, joins us now on Golic and Wingo. All right, Doris, first of all, congratulations on all the accolades. Well-deserved, as always. But let's talk a little bit about LeBron here for a second. He basically said, I'm toast, I'm fried, I got nothing. The question then becomes, what will he have when Game 2 rolls around? Or the Series 2, Game 1 against Toronto rolls around?
Listen, I think he'll be ready. I'm not surprised he's exhausted. It was unusual yesterday. He's a guy, all of these guys understand, how much they have to take care of their bodies, hydrate, et cetera, et cetera. But I've covered, as you know, LeBron for a long time, Trey. And one thing yesterday, I don't know whether his cramping issues are back, but the amount of fluid in front of him, the amount he was drinking, just seemed different to me. I may be crazy, but then he goes back in with some minor cramping. So it is something I think he's going to have to be careful with, because the minutes that he's playing are, off the charts for somebody in his 15th year and what he's able to achieve. I don't know if he's marching closer in people's minds to Michael Jordan, but certainly when this guy's career is all said and done, I just don't know how he's not top 3 all time. It's hard for me not to see that.
And again, this coming off of playing in all 82 regular season games. Doris, you mentioned you've seen him a lot, been around him a lot, and I know one of the things when I'm doing a game, I like to watch the sideline, stuff that's not seen on TV, of how people are reacting, and I'm sure you do the same thing. So how does LeBron look? How does he look in timeouts? How does he look just from facial expression to body, how that looks over the years you've seen him? Or just maybe is it more now of how tired he actually is?
Well, I feel it's funny, Mike. I'm sorry, and Trey, I called you Mike. Listen, I feel like the man's indestructible. When I was on the road and I actually saw him bleed, I remember texting my brother. I'm like, oh, my God, LeBron's bleeding. I think that's the first time I've seen that. Like, when you're watching him, Mike, it's like you're watching this indestructible force. I was listening to a Zach Lowe podcast, and this is how in awe anybody is who's around the league every day and watches LeBron, every day. Like Zach Lowe on a podcast said, I think you could take a machete to LeBron's head and he wouldn't feel it. Obviously, just the extreme reaction to what we see on a daily basis. As I watched him yesterday in the sideline, in the huddles, I saw nothing different other than, the amount of fluids he was taking in. So I don't see these signs of incredible exhaustion. I'm just listening to what he's saying in the postgame to Dave McMenamin. And Dave's thought was appropriate. As the series move on, is he required to do more? And frankly, is that going to be a situation where it's simply him doing more or him doing as much as he can is not enough for that particular team? I don't know the answer to that. We'll see what Toronto has for them.
Well, that is the question, right, Doris, as whether or not Toronto can finally be – I mean, if not now, when for Toronto, right? They've got LeBron saying he's burnt. This is not obviously a team around him that can give him a lot of supporting help. Not one time in this 7-game series did anybody else on this Cavs team get to 20 points in a game. Toronto has home court. They have rest. If not now for Toronto to beat Cleveland, then when?
Trey, it's a fascinating thing for me to watch. Like, I was so happy I had Game 6 on the road in the Washington-Toronto series, because to me, if Toronto had lost that game, in my mind, they were not true contenders for the Eastern Conference title, because teams that are the best in the East, have the second best record in the league, have got to be able to win on the road. And I understand Washington wasn't a typical 8 seed, but to me, it's time. You have, an all-star backcourt. I do think you probably could use more productivity on the offensive end at the 3 position. I do think Toronto's a team that could use more shooting, but their style is better suited to today's NBA. There's still a lot of pick and roll for DeMar DeRozan, and he's brilliant in those situations. I thought Kyle Lowry's play, Trey, on the road was crucial. Remember how much criticism this guy has taken. And in the second quarter, when they didn't have their legs underneath them, Kyle Lowry went for 10 points. The bench was absolutely the difference maker in the second half for that team. They're deeper, they're better, their style is more suited, but you're still playing a once-in-a-generation player, and I'm fascinated by this series.
Talking to Doris Burke, and of the 3 teams other than the Cavs left in the East, Doris, which team in your mind would have the best chance to beat Cleveland?
I am surprised I'm saying this, but the way Philadelphia is playing, the additions of Ersan Ilyasova and Marco Bellinelli to give them that punch and productivity off the bench, they're incredibly long. They defend, they play hard. And I'm going to go back to something J.J. Redick said to me when we had covered them early in November. He said, if we get to a place where we understand the value of every possession and don't turn it over, he said, we can be really good. I mean, I was talking to him after practice, and he was obviously assuming that health, sort of stayed in place for Joel Embiid. And I want you guys to consider something, and I'd be curious your take on this. When I watch Joel Embiid, I still think there's another level in terms of his conditioning. Like, this guy is an absolute monster right now, and I don't think he's in the best shape he could be in. And obviously it's because he's limited practice time, and they're trying to be careful with him, and they're looking in the long view. But guys, I don't think he's in the best condition he can be in, and he's still an absolute terror.
Well, you're right, and because he's still. Some of these guys take a few years to figure out what they need to eat and how they need to manage this stuff. Joel Embiid is just sort of going on right now, Doris, is the fact that, what's that line? Gosh darn it, I'm bigger and stronger. You know, I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean,
right.
He's just going with I'm bigger and stronger than you and I'm younger. When he figures that part out of it, you're right. He's going to be an absolute terror. Listen, before we let you go, we got to get to the Western Conference here real quickly. The way this thing is shaped up, Doris, with what we've seen out of Golden State, and it looks like Steph Curry may be coming back sometime this week. Right now, if you had to put the bet in, would it be in on Houston to get there? Or would it be on Golden State?
It's on Golden State for me, Trey. It is. They're so hard to guard. And listen, the way they performed in game one, remember what Steve Kerr always tells us game after game after game. He said Steph, and even Kevin Durant has said this, the system is based around Steph Curry. The movement, the attention he draws, he completely shifts the defense. So they go out and dominate game one, and they're still getting a player back who really drives the entire system. So for me, it's Golden State, yeah.
All right, we'll see if it plays out that way. Doris, as always, great to talk to you, and congratulations on the fact that you got game, but we knew that already.
Thanks, Trey.
Thanks, Doris.
Talk to you.
Golic and Wingo.
Let's not expect too much. There's only one person out there that's expecting way too much out of this guy too early. We know who that is. It's his father.
We are delighted to have in studio for the foreseeable future Mel Kiper Jr. and Todd McShay. Guys, I feel like I never left you. How are we?
We're good, surviving.
You guys just changing studios, whether in the stadium, outside, or now in the studio here. When is it, like, done? As far as the draft, when will you guys be, like,
tomorrow,
off the clock?
I think, right? Tomorrow.
4:30 p.m.
4:30 today.
After your 2019 mock draft?
84 to 90 East.
Tomorrow?
Well, for me, the
Today?
end of May wraps it up. And then you get a break.
Okay.
Yeah, the end of May is finished, and, of course, Todd has a mock coming out. I had the big board coming out in 2 weeks with all the positional stuff. So middle of May, really, for that stuff.
I'll start tape next week on 2019, and then go through June, and then take July off.
So overall, Mel, I'll start with you. Just overall, this draft as compared to some other draft, how this one went, and the talent overall.
The talent was good. I think it was exciting at the top. And Trey, we talked about the curveball that was thrown by Cleveland and John Dorsey, because at 1 and 4, he went different than I think conventional wisdom would have said. And I think we were all expecting Darnold or Allen to go 1.
Right.
Yeah, Todd was Darnold, I was Allen. Yeah. We're 0 for 2. It ended up being Baker, who kind of was the guy that you heard in there, but did you really believe it? Probably not. But Dorsey was intrigued by Manziel back in the day, and he went and said, okay, I don't care about anything else. Now, I don't know if what happened with Josh Allen with the tweets. I don't know.
Doesn't sound like it.
Right. Yeah, well, they're not going to say anything.
Right.
They're never going to tell you that affected their decision, but you never know. It was supposedly come down. Mary Kay Cabot reported it come down to those two, and Darnold was being pushed down, and we don't know. But at the end of the day, Denzel Ward over Bradley Chubb was also a surprise. So if we would have sat there on draft day and tried to predict what was going to happen with both picks, we'd have been wrong. So, but it doesn't mean that they're not going to be wrong. Right. So, Ward's a good player. I don't think anybody would have knocked Ward if he'd been picked by anybody in the top 10. And nobody would have knocked Mayfield had he been picked by Miami.
No.
Would have said good pick.
No, even the Jets.
Yeah.
So, if it went Darnold and then Mayfield, I would have understood that too.
Exactly.
So overall, how would this draft to you?
I tell you what, we're in for a shock next year unless some things change, because this was a record-setting draft. When you talk about 4 quarterbacks in the top 10.
Never happened before.
The amount of viewership. I mean, day 3, even with Shaq Griffin and the stories that we had in this draft, and the most viewed ever on day 3 in this year's draft class. So some years are just better than others, and it oftentimes has to do with the quarterbacks. And this year was a special group because there was so much hype with the 3, and then Baker goes out and has a record-setting season and keeps moving up the board. I mean, we had him as a second, third round prospect coming into the year, and a lot of NFL teams did. Don't let anyone lie to you. I mean, I have several friends who were scouts who were sitting there going, back up day 2 in that range, and then he starts playing this year and hanging in the pocket and doing more NFL things and starts going up and up and up the board. So anytime you have 5 quarterbacks that are big name quarterbacks and are drafted in the first round, it's tough to beat that.
Mel Kiper and Todd with us in studio, giving us a Straight Talk budget by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. Let's stick there for a second, because You're right. We talked about this before the season began, that everyone thought Baker Mayfield, maybe a third round. Late second round, maybe third round. Day 2 guy for sure. And then one season changes everything. Now, he had been at Oklahoma for a long time. Why do you think this one season in a draft in which we were quarterback rich changed the narrative about Baker so much?
I'll say this. All three of the big three were destined to have disappointing years. And we talked about that in August.
Right.
That, with Josh Allen had lost, with Sam Darnold had lost, with Josh Rosen coming off the shoulder. So I think the hype of those three and the disappointment of how they played, considering the hype, was the reason why Baker, who was out there lighting it up, was able to garner a lot of attention and gain momentum, build on that to the point where he becomes the number 1 pick, which was also a surprise even after all that push-up. They got to the top spot. But I think it was because of we were able to kind of poke holes and come up with red flags for the 3 players that were ranked way ahead of him.
Well, don't forget, too, Baker lost 2 running backs to the NFL. He lost basically all of his wide receivers and came back and had better numbers. And I thought, if you go back and really study it, from the after the Iowa State game, from that point on, I think it was Texas was the following week, but after the Iowa State loss, it's almost like they made a decision. We're going to stay in the pocket. And he started showing more and more patience, even against Ohio State. He had a really good game, but he was moving around and wasn't trusting his protection. And it was like back lot football where it felt more like Johnny Manziel. And then as the season progressed, more and more, he started hanging in the pocket, and it looked more like Russell Wilson. And to me, I think NFL teams started looking at it and saying, all right, this looks a lot more like our game. And I think every single game you saw from that point on, he started to rise.
And I think that, along with Mel, what you said, and I agree, the 3 guys, there's no way they were living up to the hype from before the season, and they absolutely didn't live up to that hype. They all had their issues. Before we move into some of the later picks, who was the guy in the first round that dropped the most where you said, boy, oh boy, somebody got to steal
Derwin James.
Derwin James got to be, right?
17. Yeah. I mean, a guy that we thought could go as high as 7.
Which is interesting because that would have been where the Bucs would have picked before they made the trade with Buffalo at 7.
Exactly.
Then they moved back to 12. We were all surprised
and they still don't take him at 12.
That was the thing that surprised a lot of us, that they didn't take him at 12.
It's a good one.
26. Yeah, Calvin Ridley at 26. The Atlanta, when we thought maybe top 10 back when we were doing the mocks early on, maybe Chicago, we thought at 8 could take Calvin Ridley. He drops all the way to the late first round and goes to where Julio Jones is, the old Alabama Crimson Tide receiver.
And the second receiver
spectacular.
taken.
That was late for receivers too, right?
Yeah.
24
I think it was
DJ Moore?
Not an overreaction, because the 3 receivers went top 10 did nothing. Yeah. And we brought up all the stats about how young receivers struggle, and all the receivers this year got pushed down.
Well, to that point, the last 2 seasons, second-round receivers did much better over the last 2 years than first-round receivers did over the last couple of seasons. Before we get on to anything else, I want to pin you guys down on this because we had 5 quarterbacks go in the first round, only the 3rd time ever that's happened, 99 and 83 when we had 6. If you had to put all your chips in the table on one of these quarterbacks being the quarterback out of this draft, because historically says 50-50 hit or miss here on quarterbacks, which one are you all in on still?
Josh Allen.
Josh Allen?
I'm not.
All right.
I'm going down with Josh. I'm going to sink or swim with Josh Allen. You're going with Darnold, I know.
Yeah, I mean, I knew Baker Mayfield was the first overall pick, and I kept Sam Darnold 1 because I'm so stubborn.
Smart.
Yeah.
Hey, this guy. Talk about stubborn. Yeah. Shefty, Mort's going to be Mayfield. It's going to be Mayfield. Yeah.
I knew by 9 a.m. Sports Center.
I'm sticking with Darnold.
Yeah.
Listen.
So you're Allen and you're Darnold.
You're Darnold, and I'm Rosen. I mean, for the health,
and I'll be Lamar.
Well, and listen,
John Dorsey's Mayfield.
And all that said, the Browns did absolutely the right thing if they think Baker Mayfield was their highest rated guy. Without question, we just all disagree with that pick. With all the quarterbacks that are out there. But all that matters is what they think and what they rate.
By the way, Russell Wilson would have gone number 1 in that draft.
Yeah.
What would we have been saying there?
Oh, you can't take a guy that's short.
Kidding me?
He's under 6 foot. I mean,
so John Schneider would have won that battle, right?
Bill Polian's head would have exploded.
John Schneider
and Baker.
John's going here. We got John Schneider and John Dorsey throwing curveballs.
Baker's going to a good situation. This is not the old Cleveland.
You are 100%.
You've got a quarterback coach that can coach quarterbacks in Ken Zampese. Todd Haley at the coordinator spot. You've got weapons. I mean, they brought in Nick Chubb. Carlos Hyde at running back, Duke
Juice
Johnson,
Landry,
who can catch the ball out of the backfield, Landry,
Josh Gordon.
To go with Josh Gordon at wide receiver. Their offensive line's okay. Their defense should be solid.
They're going to be 8-8.
So they could be 8-8 this year.
Let me ask you guys, all of you. You can all answer this. We all will. On same thing about now the quarterbacks. You draft for a decade. You don't draft for their rookie year. But that being said, I'm going to go to the rookie year. Which of the 5 quarterbacks in the first round sees the field first?
Whoa. I would say, based on where we are right now with knowing the history of Sam Bradford, maybe Rosen. But you think about McCown and Bridgewater. It's tempting to think Darnold, but he's so young, and they got to fix him.
I also think maybe Buffalo, and not like A.J. McCarron has been the starter for years.
Yeah, I think just Josh.
But I don't think Josh is ready.
And I think Mayfield,
though,
Tyrod Taylor was brought. Now this could be where Russell Wilson beat out Matt Flynn. Who knows?
Right.
I got a stat for you. You ready?
Hit me.
It's actually a trivia question. I think I gave one of you guys this, so don't cheat. Okay. There's one quarterback this decade who's drafted in the first round who did not start a game in his rookie year. Who is it?
You told me this on the ride back, and I still can't remember. That's the worst part about it.
I'll give you a second to think, but that's the point. Only one out of all these first-round quarterbacks has not started a game in his rookie year, so expect to see
in the last decade. Right?
So forget seeing them.
Yeah, forget Carson Palmer.
Forget seeing them, but starting. You're saying starting a game.
Starting a game. Yep. E.J. Manuel is the only one.
Yeah. Wow. So basically, if you draft a guy, remember that was the thing with Blake Bortles. We're going to send him for a year that lasted 3 games.
Right.
Okay.
This is the first year where we've had legitimate players in a spot to be the starter ahead of the rookie.
I think Lamar will play, but I don't think he's going to start any games this year.
I agree with that.
Would be my guess.
He'll be a pack, but it's also going to be the first year where this would be something where you would say, based on the veterans are in place or the quarterbacks are in place, if the rookies are playing this year, I think we'll never say it again. We'll never say rookies aren't maybe here, won't play. We thought Glennon was going to be the guy with Trubisky got in there. So I think this will be the final shot for these guys to hold on to their position.
I thought they've already given up. I think this year more than any other year, it would be more on injury this time with the veterans that are in front of them. Okay, now the guy who was rated maybe a first rounder who didn't go in the first round, that was the best value pick. I'm going to give mine first. Maurice Hurst. 5th rounder, had the heart situation. Luckily, everything's fine there. Now, I don't know if you guys can't remember if you had him as a first rounder, second rounder type of guy anyway.
But to
go in the 5th.
Maurice Hurst, the defensive tackle out of
Michigan.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yes.
How about Josh Jackson? Going in
quarterback out of Iowa.
I'll give you another Iowa guy, James Daniels.
James Daniels,
the center out of Iowa. From Iowa, who went pick 39 to the Chicago Bears.
Baltimore could have taken him, and because they need a center, and
I
they
was
went
surprised.
for Lamar Jackson instead.
I was surprised at the 2 centers that went in the first round, and none of them Daniels. I think Daniels may kick the guard in Chicago. But I was surprised. It was a Ragnow and
Ragnow
was a high riser.
Price, right? And Price who tore his pec at the combine.
Well, that was he got the medical recheck that he should be good to go by the time training camp starts. Todd McShay, Mel Kiper Jr., our draft experts in with us. We talk a lot about the first round, but as we've seen over the years, it is late round guys that come out. And you mentioned Maurice Hurst. We had a lot of quarterbacks taken in the first round. Was there a quarterback not drafted in the first round that you guys are like, keep your eye on this guy?
I like Luke Falk in the 6th round to Tennessee. I was a little
because we didn't have a quarterback taken in the second round, which was very unusual.
New England, didn't take him. They New England took Danny Etling, but I'll go with Luke Falk from Washington State, and you just set up perfectly for your guy.
Kyle Lauletta from Richmond.
Yes.
Was it 5th round, fourth round of the New York Giants.
Where'd you go to school?
University of Richmond.
Yeah. Okay. Who's this kid you're talking about? Where did you go to school?
Kyle Lauletta went to University of Richmond. Spiders.
Hold on there, Notre Dame boy. Come on.
Have I brought that up yet?
I get to do this once. This is the first time since 1975.
Every segment.
Have I brought that up yet? By the way, Quentin Nelson will join us at 9:30. The guard from Notre Dame.
Followed by Mike McGlinchey.
Keep going, Mike.
He's in a good situation. Eli's there. Davis Webb could eventually become the starter, or they could bring somebody else in, and I think Lauletta will wind up being a really good backup for the Giants.
Okay, so with all that being said, somebody made a mistake early in this draft. It happens every year. We don't know it now, but it turns out, we shouldn't have done that. Was there one pick in the first round to begin with, as Mel and Todd are with us in studio, that had you guys thinking, I wouldn't have taken him there?
Terrell Edmonds for me. Yeah. And go back, listen, Kevin Colbert.
Terrell Edmonds, the safety out of Virginia Tech.
First time doing radio.
That's okay.
Great.
No, it's my job. I just want to make sure everybody knows.
28th picked
28 overall.
Steelers.
Kevin Colbert is built Super Bowl winners, so I'm not knocking them. I'm interested to see how they use him. If it's more in a linebacker role, then I think that would kind of fit. But Edmonds, I had rated 81. He goes 28, and my board is my bar. I've got to go off of that, and that was the biggest stretch in terms of where I had a player rated to where he went in the first round.
And I'll flip it on the other side. A guy that dropped to the third round was Justin Reed, the safety out of Stanford.
Yeah.
And you said Edmonds was a shock to go in the first. That's a safety. We thought Justin Reed could have gone there.
Could.
He dropped had him way ahead of Edmonds.
I wonder if his brother has something to do with it.
I don't know. But that's one where you'll be watching in a couple of years to see where Edmonds is and see where Reed is, because Reed had a higher grade on our boards than Edmonds did. Edmonds goes first round, Reed goes third round. And I'll tell you, we were talking about New England and what the Patriots did. Braxton Berrios is a smart, tough kid.
Mm-hmm. Wide receiver out of Miami, went to the Patriots.
New England. He's Danny Amendola.
He's 5'8", had a 3.91 GPA.
Yeah, that's who he is. He's Danny Amendola, Wes Welker. He's a great punt returner. He's a smart kid, tough kid. And for New England, they get a 2 next year, a 3 next year. Belichick's working it properly. They had one of the best drafts, and they're already set up for next year. And Berrios will be one of the more immediate standouts because he's going to fill a role right away.
Completely agree.
And how they know how to use. Yep. Brady loves the Welker, Amendola role of those players and what they can do. And now Berrios, who should be able to play as a rookie, will help.
He's
them.
as tough as nails as well, just like those guys. A reach for me in the first round was Colton Miller.
Yeah,
going to the Raiders at 15. I just don't see.
They wanted McGlinchey.
Yeah.
And San Fran took him at 9. You go back to that coin flip. Remember the coin flip?
That's right. Yeah, at the combine, right?
They were sitting there. They were going to take him
right.
10. So it's amazing how one flip of the coin.
You never know. Hey, I remember with Perry Tuttle, Mike Quick thing. You never know. You might what it goes, and you're settle, and the guy that you settle for turns out to be a lot better.
For those that don't know, those are 2 wide receivers that went in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
Perry Tuttle and Mike Quick. Mike Quick is the name we remember, the wide receiver for the Eagles out of North Carolina State.
Yes.
Mel has been majoring in dated references this week.
Did you like my one yesterday? I said the Cleveland Browns threw a Burt Blyleven curveball.
There you go.
Yeah. He acted like Burt Blyleven was from 1940.
Well, I mean, couldn't you?
Before they raised the mound.
The 18 to 25 demo probably doesn't.
I'm in trouble with
that
that demo.
Yeah, it's not your demo.
Mel and Todd with us in studio. Were any one of you curious, as I was, about Rashad Penny going the running back out of San Diego State in the first round?
No, because he ran in the 4.45 range at 220 pounds. He's got great production, great versatility.
Where'd you have him rated, Mel?
As an early to mid-second.
Okay. But I mean, your 4th or 5th running back?
Yeah, but it's not that much separating.
It was the second, right?
It wasn't much separating.
I just want to make sure you're keeping honest here.
Darius Geis and Rashad Penny was hardly any difference. Hardly. After Saquon Barkley tie, let's get real. There was no difference.
And Geis fell because of the character.
Right, so there was that second running back spot could have been Geis, it could have been Michelle, could have been Chubb, could have been Penny, could have been anybody. So this notion that Rashad Penny can't play and he should have been a 5th round
pick.
No
one's saying he can't play, but I think we were all surprised that he went in the first round, especially when someone like Sony Michel, the running back out of Georgia, was still sitting there. And lo and behold, after they take Penny, what do the Patriots do? They go and get Sony Michel right away.
Some of Seattle's best picks over the years have been the ones where we're sitting there on draft day going,
the head scratcher.
Yeah, well, we probably could have gotten him around later. But if you go back and look at the history, it's kind of early on when they were great at drafting. They had picks like this, and we all mocked them, and then they turned out to be really good players.
Guys, these mocks will drive you nuts because
right.
You get into the mocks.
Stop doing them.
Say a guy was mocked here, but he put him in. How could they take a guy who was never mocked in the first?
Yeah.
How dare they? He wasn't mocked there.
Yeah.
Well, who cares?
They're mocking the mock is basically what they're doing.
Is there a team that had multiple head scratchers to you? So a team that graded a little less in this draft that you just weren't sure of some of the moves they were making?
Well, you could look at the Raiders maybe as a risk reward. Look,
they took some big hacks.
Right? If Colton Miller works out, swings, great. Yeah. If Maurice Hurst-Hart is fine, that's a steal.
P.J. Hall.
Arden Key, who has all kinds of issues and very inconsistent. That to me seems like the home run or strikeout draft.
Yeah. Totally.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Completely agree. And P.J. Hall, we all thought third,
P.J. Hall, the defensive
tackle, Sam Houston State, not invited to the combine. Only player I think in the first 2 rounds drafted that was not invited to the combine. Doesn't mean he's not going to be a good player. He led the FCS in kick block kicks. He's 3 off the all-time record in the FCS for block kicks as a defensive tackle, and he's got quickness. He's unbelievably productive. The measurables aren't there, but they love what they saw.
If you're looking for a surprise, I think Miami and New England not getting a quarterback earlier.
Right.
Miami didn't, and New England did late.
So I think for New England I think that's a little bit telling that relationship between Bill and Tom has to be repaired a little bit. I think from everything you hear and all the reports, and this is I think, hey, you're our guy, we get it. Mm-hmm. We're going to go with you, and we're going to put everything around you that we possibly can, and that's what they did in this draft.
One last thing I'll say, which I think is kind of interesting when you look at something that may or may not work out in terms of these draft picks going forward. Was there one other guy that you were like, okay, I'm not so sure about this, but it may work out. Is there one of those?
Yeah, the guy that's interesting is Marcus Davenport.
That's the guy I'm glad you said
that.
Because New Orleans gave up a first-round pick to get him. So he's the defensive end out of UTSA. He was the second best pass rusher we thought in this draft. But basically, they gave up a first-round pick for him, which means he's got to be a hit.
I got a call in January. So I in the NFL.
Yeah.
That said, you're finally on Davenport.
Yeah.
You better be, because he could be the top 5 pick.
Yeah.
He goes to the Senior Bowl and he doesn't wow everybody over, and all of a sudden he's dropped a little bit. They gave up. This is going to be interesting. Green Bay needed a pass rusher.
Right.
Green Bay allowed New Orleans to jump into their spot and take Marcus Davenport, and they gave up a first next year. Davenport is a guy in a draft with no pass rushers. He was the second best guy behind Bradley Chubb. Marcus Davenport has an elite skill set. He wants to be great. He's got the right frame of mind. People say, well, he's jumping from that level to this level. All I can say is he can get after the quarterback, and he is tremendously long and athletic. He can close like a cat. Marcus Davenport is the one that you're talking mid-first round that could have been, back in January, people were talking top 5. So there you go. Davenport, watch him. He could be Defensive Player of the Year.
Interested to see Leighton Vander Esch for Dallas.
Right, for Dallas, yeah.
There's some durability. Some teams dropped him because of the neck injury, but he comes out of Boise State. He's got unbelievable measurables. I liked his tape. I didn't love parts of his tape. I thought a little bit late shooting his guns, if you will. Diagnosed quickly and gets there, but making tackles 2-3 yards down, 2-3 yards into the run versus at the line of scrimmage where Roquan Smith would have made them. And is a little bit tight in terms of change of direction skills, but they love him, and their defense drops off when they have injuries at the linebacker position. The Dallas Cowboys needed a guy like this. I understand the pick, but I'm interested to see if he plays the level that what a 19th overall pick should play.
When Rashaan Evans was still on the board.
That's true, too.
So real quickly,
linebacker out
with
of Alabama.
The mock draft and the next big board coming up, how many defensive linemen will be in the top 5? Nick Bosa, Ed Oliver, and how many D linemen from Clemson? I mean,
at least ridiculous. 2 in the first round.
Right? I got 7 of the top 10 players defensive linemen.
Yeah.
The only offensive players are quarterback Drew Lock, Missouri,
right.
Wide receiver A.J. Brown, Ole Miss, and offensive tackle Greg Little from Ole Miss.
You know how sick this guy is?
Yeah.
This started on last Monday.
You're talking about Mel, not Mike and I, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The only one in here can be called that.
Yeah. I don't. Right.
It fits us all.
On Monday, this guy starts on. Who are your top 5 running backs? Who are your running backs? When are you doing your mock draft? When's your mock draft? Todd, when's the mock draft coming up? Monday? Is the mock on Tuesday? Mock on what?
I'm anxious to see it.
He hasn't stopped. Every single. I mean, we have a draft coming up.
Yeah.
I'm talking about last week.
Before this draft.
He's on 2019 before we even had the first pick.
He's going, Todd, 2019 draft.
We closed that book already.
Well, listen,
his
work was done.
He's from Maryland. Pumpkin pie and football. That's what Maryland does. Yeah.
Exactly.
Pumpkin pie and football. Mel, Todd, you're the best.
Thanks, guys.
Now get the hell out of here.
This has been the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast. You can listen or subscribe on the ESPN app, Apple Podcasts, or just ask your smart speaker to play Golic and Wingo. Plus, you can check the guys out live weekday mornings from 6 to 10 Eastern on ESPN Radio and on ESPN News.
I'm a one-trick pony. Literally. I show up at kids' parties and act cute. That's pretty much it. So excuse me for being bitter when Geico says not only could we save you money on car insurance, but we do more. Like give you 24/7 access online, over the phone, or even via our award-winning mobile app. Well, ooh la la. Aren't they multi-talented? Hey, I said organic carrots.
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.